Hello everyone, my name is Catherine Rose and I am a folk singer from the Pacific Northwest, and I would like to tell you a little story today and sing you a song. So as a folk singer, you start to see patterns with the songs that you learn. Even though they're from a really long time ago, the things that seem old and maybe irrelevant when you first learn them have a knack for suddenly starting to feel very timely. And that is something that's happened with the song I'm going to sing for you today. I learned it a few years ago, and it's called The Well Below the Valley-O. It's an old ballad. Don't know when it was written. You know, it's kind of hard to date those things, but it was probably circulating around in the 1800s at least, and maybe the roots for it came earlier and somebody cobbled it together, you know, as kind of happens with these things. And it's an interesting song to me because it tells the story of a woman who's being abused by her family. And the question that people ask with songs like this, or, you know, old stories like Cinderella, they feel like they're irrelevant to the modern day because they say, well, you know, she wouldn't just stay there and take that. Like, she could just leave. Why doesn't she just leave? Why didn't she leave then? You know, this story doesn't make sense. But there's a lot of reasons why somebody would not be able to leave an abusive situation even if they wanted to, and that continues to play out today all the time. And the primary question that rings in the mind of somebody trying to get out of a thing like that is, where will you go? And if you were raised to not be particularly independent, if you don't know the resources available to you, you know, you might think that you really don't have anywhere to go. You might be very isolated. You might not be able to reach out to anyone. So if, like, to put this in context, I think it's helpful to go back through the history a little bit. So assuming that this was circulating around in the 1800s, let's look at, you know, the kind of the rights that women would have had at that time. They definitely couldn't vote in the US or Europe ish around that time. So in 1848, a couple things happened. There was an attempt to organize a national movement for women's rights in Seneca Falls, New York. And also in that year, the Married Women's Property Act was passed in New York. And what that did was it made a woman, if she was married, you know, she was not automatically liable for her husband's debts, and she could enter into her own contracts, and basically remained an individual rather than sort of a subcategory of her husband. This eventually became law in all states, but not until the year 1900. Then moving on to 1920, we have, you know, women's suffrage in the United States became part of the Constitution, but it was not a universal right. Not every woman could vote. If you were a person of color, you couldn't vote, and probably there were restrictions around if you were married or not. Maybe that affected your voting status. I'm not sure. But definitely, like, just because something becomes part of the Constitution doesn't mean that everyone just automatically gets it, right? So skipping ahead from 1920, it's not until 1974 that we get the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, which means that a woman no longer needed a man to co-sign on credit applications. So previously to this, if a woman, you know, for example, if she wanted to leave an abusive situation, she would have to find somewhere to live, right? And maybe her family wouldn't take her in because, you know, divorce wasn't really a thing, and maybe they disapproved of what she was doing. And so she maybe could find a place to rent, maybe, if she wasn't pregnant, if she didn't have children, which is unlikely because pregnancy happened pretty soon after marriage a lot of the time. So anyway, this Equal Credit Opportunity Act meant she no longer needed a man, like a brother or a father or some dude, right, to co-sign on credit applications. So if she couldn't afford to buy a house outright, which many couldn't, because first of all, there was wage discrimination, and then there was just holding on to money in general would have been difficult. She could get credit and then be able to support herself better than she could have ever before. And owning property, I mean, that's a big deal. That's a big deal for independence. But again, not until 1974, you know. I wasn't around then, but, you know, my parents, other people's parents, grandparents, whatever, they lived through this change. So this is in living memory that this has happened for us. Then in 1978, they passed the Pregnancy Discrimination Act, which said that a woman can't be dismissed from a job if she becomes pregnant. Now, again, with these kinds of things, like, it doesn't mean that automatically all women were now safe from being fired for being pregnant. Like, I'm sure this continued on and still happens. There's still ways that employers get around this, but it at least was enshrined in law that, like, if somebody had the resources, you know, she could fight against this. Because again, if you're trying to get out of an abusive situation and you're trying to house yourself, but you're pregnant because you couldn't say no to your abusive partner, you're then not going to be able to be employed, so you can't make money, so you can't afford rent or a house or any, you know, it just snowballs with all of this. So it's taken us a long time to get to the point where you can actually get out of things sometimes if they're abusive to you. So you know, and if you have children and you're in this situation, gosh, it's a million times harder, because then there's, you know, all of the sort of court things that have to be handled and visitation and blah, 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 blah. And it just tears you apart when you have to go through this process. So there's plenty of reasons why somebody would choose to not leave a situation that was abusive to them. You know, and if you're looking back into the 1800s, your job options are even more limited, right? Like probably some sort of factory work, and if you couldn't get that, then, you know, maybe you end up having to sell your body, and then you get pregnant again, and then you have more children, and like it just continues the cycle over and over. So there's this trap, you know, there's this trap when you try to get out of something bad. And this ballad that I heard, like a lot that I've heard about this subject, blames the woman for her condition and for her situation. But here's the thing. Ballads circulate orally. So maybe there's a version that gets written down, but like there would be, right, 10, 20, 50 versions of this floating around, you know, Europe and the United States. And the versions that are going to get written down and that are going to survive are going to be the most popular ones. So those would be ones that appeal to those in power and are going to get past censorship laws and things like that. So when I learn a ballad like this, I never feel like, oh, this is the only message that's in the ballad. Like, in this case, I felt like there was another voice that wanted to speak through this. The woman in the ballad needed to be able to tell her own story, and so I'm going to offer you another version of it. And so yeah, again, this is The Well Below the Valley-O. A gentleman was passing by, he asked for a drink as he got dry at the well below the valley-o. Green grows the lily-o, right among the bushes-o. Me cup is full up to the brim, if I were to stoop, I might fall in at the well below the valley-o. Green grows the lily-o, right among the bushes-o. If your true love was passing by, you'd fill him a drink as he got dry at the well below the valley-o. Green grows the lily-o, right among the bushes-o. She swore by grass, she swore by corn, that her true love had never been born at the well below the valley-o. Green grows the lily-o, right among the bushes-o. He said, young maid, you're swearing wrong, for 6 fine children you had born at the well below the valley-o. Green grows the lily-o, right among the bushes-o. If you be a man of noble fame, you'll tell to me the father of them at the well below the valley-o. Green grows the lily-o, right among the bushes-o. There's 2 of them by your Uncle Dan, another 2 by your brother John, at the well below the valley-o. Green grows the lily-o, right among the bushes-o. Another 2 by your father mother dear, and do your eyes now fill with fear at the well below the valley? Oh, green grows the lily, oh, right among the bushes, oh. If you be a man of noble esteem, you'll tell to me what did happen to them at the well below the valley, oh, green grows the lily, oh, right among the bushes, oh. There's two buried neath the stable door, another two near the kitchen door, at the well below the valley, oh, green grows the lily, oh, right among the bushes, oh. Another two buried neath the well, their bones cry out like a ringing bell, at the well below the valley, oh, green grows the lily, oh, right among the bushes, oh. If you be a man of noble fame, you'll tell to me what'll happen me sell at the well below the valley, oh, green grows the lily, oh, right among the bushes, oh. You'll be 7 years locked in a cell, you'll be 7 more reporting in hell at the well below the valley, oh, green grows the lily, oh, right among the bushes, oh. I won't be any years in jail, for I'd no say in this sad tale at the well below the valley, oh, green grows the lily, oh, right among the bushes, oh. I won't be any years in hell, I live there now, as you know well, at the well below the valley, oh, green grows the lily, oh, right among the bushes, oh, green grows the lily, oh, right among the bushes, oh. So that was The Well Below the Valley-O, and if you take anything from this, it's that when you take people's choices away, it just results in tragedy for everyone. Thank you.